Okay, so this is our part 2 of our video on graphing hyperbolas. All right, so we already had part 1. You hopefully have watched part 1. And part 1 is like, okay, how do you graph it when you already have everything in the right spot? It's already in standard form. Now we're going to go through the steps to put it into standard form and then those lovely steps to figure everything out. So let's start with putting this in standard form. It's very, very similar to what the steps we took to put an ellipse in standard form. In fact, it's identical. So we're going to start with 9x squared minus 54x. We're going to group our x's together. We're going to group our y's together. Now, one of them is going to be negative in a hyperbola. And I'm going to put my 55 on the right side. Okay. So when I factor out here, when I'm factoring out in my x squared value, I'm going to factor out a positive 9, and I'm left with x squared minus 6x. Here I'm going to factor out a negative 4 because I still want a positive x squared in order for the difference of two square or the completing the square to work. So I'd have left y squared plus 10y here. Actually, I should have left some space here. Sorry guys, we'll figure it out. And then we still have equal 55. All right, what do I add to both sides? So now over here, this is what I had. I needed to have more space here, sorry. I'm going to write this way out. Okay, so in my x values, what I'm going to have is I'm going to take half of the minus 6, which is negative 3, and square it. So I'm adding 9 to both sides. I'm going to have to go down here. Remember, I'm not just adding 9, but this 9 has been connected or is connected with the other 9, so it's actually adding 81 there, 9 times 9. Here, half of the 10 is 5, and squared is 25, and I'm really adding, and it's not positive 4 times 25, but negative 4 times 25 here. That's what I'm subtracting technically from both sides. So now here, I would get 9, I would get 9, and then it'd be x minus 3 quantity squared. Here it's minus 4, and it's y plus 5 quantity squared equals, I got to think what I have here. I have 81, I have 55, and I have a negative 100. All right, 81 and the 55 together. I'm going to pause. So I got 36 for my answer there. So now I'm going to divide everything by 36 because we know that what we get here is we have to have it equal to 1. So this is going to take some space on your notebooks. Don't be afraid to use a notebook paper and to take a lot of space up to solve these. So my equation now, not 6, sorry, 4. So here what I'm doing is I'm reducing this fraction. That's what I did here with the 9. The fraction 9 over 36 reduces down to 1 over 4. Here I'm reducing this fraction, 4, and this would be a 9, and then equals 1. All right. Now, what do I know by looking at it in standard form? I know my center is at 3, 5. I know my A is 2. All right, and no longer is your A the larger one. Your A is whatever is positive. I know my B is 3, all right, because again, it's 3 squared would be 9, 2 squared is 4. I can figure out my C. My C is my A plus my B, so my C is the square root of 13, plus or minus. We'll get to plus or minus in a minute, but kind of technically it's not plus or minus. Our C is just square root of 13. And then what else do I need to know here? I'm trying to think what else I need to know. What else I need to know are the vertices. The vertices are going to affect the x because this is an x squared, so it's going to look like this. All right, so my vertices are going to affect the x values. All right, so it's only going to get plus or minus the x values is what happens to my A here. So what I'm doing in my head is I'm going 3 plus 2 and 3 minus 2. So I went plus or minus my A values above and or to the right and to the left of this. So I got 5, and it's still 5, 5. So this 5 stays the same, and then it's 1, 5 for my vertices. So that's just kind of what was happening in my head. Other things I need to know about. I need to know my foci. And that's just like the vertices, it's the c. So again, and it's affected by the x's because the x is what's positive. So we would start with that 3 and we would add and subtract my c value, my c, and then I keep my y the same. That's my foci. And then we have our equations for our asymptotes. A-S-I-M-P, asymptotes. Okay, if you remember, it's y minus your k. Here my k is 5 equals the slope, and we'll get at that in a minute, x minus your h. H is your 3. Okay, and then the slope is your up over your over, your whatever going up and down compared to your over. And here its case it's 3 over 2. Okay, so it is your b over your a in this case. And it's plus minus because we have two values. So those are all things we kind of need for the math part of it, but then we also need to graph it. I need to bring the graph down, don't I? So let's bring this graph, oh, sorry about that. Let's bring this graph down so we can graph it a little better. All right, so here's our graph. We have a center at 3, 5. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3, 5. From my center, all right, I have vertices. One at 5, 5, which was 2 to the right, and one at 1, 5, which was 2 to the left, okay? To complete the box that we need here, I will go 3 above and 3 below. 3 I got from the square root of the 9, or I saw the 3 from the b. You could think of it either way. And I can kind of create my box. So there's my box. All right. From the box, I'm going to do the diagonals. That's my asymptotes. So I'm kind of making my diagonals here. And now I can graph my line. Here's my curve here. Here's my curve. So these take a while. I get that. I know. They just do. And that's okay. All right. It's good that they take a little bit of time. All right. So in this one, that's just some examples from the book that you have. In this one, when it says graph it, and we're going to have to find different things. First of all, when I'm looking at graphing this one, I kind of have a small graph here too. When I look at this one to begin with, well, what's the center point? The center point happens to be at 0, 0 for this because it's like x plus 0, y plus 0. In the x direction, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So one of my vertices is at 5, 0. And it's okay to put your vertices on your graph. The other vertices is 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Negative 5, 0, right here. So you could put your two vertices here. Those are my two vertices. I didn't graph the foci in the other one. That's okay. I wrote it down. And then in the other direction, to make my box, I could go 2 up and 2 below. Where did I get the 2? Well, here, my B is 2 here. Okay. So if I made my box here, here's my box. And if I drew my asymptotes, here's my asymptotes. All right, there's my asymptotes. All right. What I know is that here's my line, and it's going to curve here along my asymptotes. So I kind of started this one with the graph first. All right. And you can even mark the center point here, like say, okay, center is at the point 0, 0. So I have the center marked, I have the vertices marked, but I need two things. I need my equation of the asymptote, and I need the foci. Let's start with the foci. I'm going to come off to the side, and I'm going to say, well, c squared equals a squared plus b squared, which is 29. Sorry, 29. So c is the square root of 29. C is affecting, and it's going to be like right in here for your one of your foci, right in here for your other foci. C affects your x. It affects whichever one is positive. So my foci is going to be, instead of that the point is 0, 0, it would be like 0 plus or minus square root of 29, and then the y is still 0. Okay? So square root of 29, if you want to think of it as a little bit less than 6, a little bit more than 5, you know, 5 point something, you can see that we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a little bit more. So that's how we got the foci there. Okay? The asymptote, equation of the asymptote, you go y minus the center point for the y equals the slope, and then x minus the center point for the x. All right, you could have just had a y and an x here. And then if you remember, you say how many up and how many over to get to the edge of from the center to the edge of the box. And I had to go 2 up and 5 over. So it's plus or minus 2/5. So if you had this for an answer, y equals plus or minus 2/5 x, that would be great. Those are the equations of both of those lines there. Okay. Now let me see if I can kind of quickly go through and graph number, or do number 19. First, I would put together my x's, and I'd put together my y's, and I have my constants on the right side. I have to factor out on my y's at least. I'm going to factor out a 4. All right, now I need to add to both sides. Here I'm going to add 9 to both sides. It's just 9 times 1 there. Here I'm going to add 1 to both sides, but it's like -4 times 1. So this turned out to be here x plus 3 quantity squared, and then we have the 4, and it's y minus 1 quantity squared, and it's equal to 10 minus 4. It's equal to 6. So divide everything by 6 because we won't want the 6 there. Oh, usually that doesn't happen. I made a mistake somewhere, guys. Help me out. Added a 9, added a 1, 4 times 1. 1 is 10. Oh, it's 11. I knew I made a mistake. I knew this wasn't right. All right, so I knew it couldn't be 6. Hopefully you're yelling at home saying, this is where your mistake was. Okay, so we have 20 minus 4. It's 16. Now that makes sense. Now I can divide everything by 16. Okay, so now my new equation is x plus 3 quantity squared over 16 minus y minus 1 quantity squared over 4. Because remember, I have to here reduce this fraction. You're reducing the fraction, and then that always has to equal 1. All right, so my center point is going to be at the point -3, +1. Okay, my foci, I have to calculate my c. My c squared would equal 16 plus 4, or 20. So my c is square root of 20. So my foci affects my x because my x is what's positive. So from the center, my foci is going to go plus or minus the square root of 20, and then it'll always stay at 1. The y isn't affected by the foci. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this. The other thing I need is I need my asymptote equation. My asymptote equation is always y minus the y value here, so y minus 1, and then equals, and we'll talk about what the slope is, the slope and the x minus a -3 or +3. The slope here is the difference in the y's compared to the difference in the x's. The difference in the y's is going to be 2. The difference in the x's is going to be 4. So I could write 2 over 4. I think I'm going to write 1/2, and it's always plus minus. Okay, I'm going to write this a little nicer here, sorry. So in the end, it turned out to be plus or minus 1/2. So let's translate that into a graph. So I think I like the graph there. I'll make it a little bit bigger. Okay, we'll translate all of that into a graph. So first of all, our center point was at -3, 1. Okay, and then from there, in the x direction, we went 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that was our vertex. So our vertex here is at 1, 1, and 1, 2, 3, 4. For our other vertex, and our vertex 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, -7, 1. All right, from there, I would go up and down 2 to make my box. So here is my box. The box helps with my asymptotes, which we already have a nice equation for our asymptotes. I need to now just make my curve. I think I got it in right under the hour, and kind of highlight that. So there's my curve. I highlighted everything, and I kind of have the list of everything I needed. Foci, vertices I marked on here. Center point is marked. That is our solution. Good luck. If you are in my hybrid class, I want you to do problems 18, 19, 20, and 21. You might want to pause it now so you can draw or write down all of these problems. You could do this with or without graph paper. That's up to you. But if you're in the hybrid, I want you to do 18 through 21. Thank you.